Solaris, and even the later Solaris adaptation, resonates deeply with A Course in Miracles because both explore an unsettling realization. The mind does not merely observe reality, it participates in generating the reality it experiences. In Solaris, the planet itself seems to manifest physical forms from unconscious memory, grief, longing, and guilt. Hidden psychological content becomes embodied and confronts the characters directly. That is profoundly ACIM-like. The Course repeatedly teaches that what is unhealed in the mind gets projected outward into perception, not symbolically only, experientially. The world becomes a screen for unresolved content. Chris Kelvin arrives as a rational psychologist expecting objective investigation. Instead, he encounters manifestations of his own unconscious attachment and guilt in the form of Hari. Hari is not simply another person in the ordinary sense. She is simultaneously memory, projection, longing, guilt, love object, unresolved grief. ACIM would recognize this dynamic immediately. The ego does not relate to others directly. It relates to its own projections, fears, needs, and self-concepts reflected through others. That does not mean relationships are unreal in a dismissive sense. It means perception is deeply filtered. The film becomes psychologically claustrophobic because the characters cannot escape their own minds. That is central in ACIM too. People often imagine suffering comes primarily from external conditions, but the Course insists the interpreting mind is the real battleground, and Solaris itself is fascinating symbolically. Solaris behaves almost like an infinite unconscious intelligence, reflecting hidden mind content back to the observer. Not malicious, not fully comprehensible, not easily controllable. Very similar to what happens during genuine inner inquiry. The unconscious begins surfacing what the ego tried to bury. The station becomes dreamlike because certainty collapses. ACM repeatedly destabilizes perceptual certainty too. What if perception is interpretation rather than direct knowing? The characters struggle because they want objective control over an experience arising from subjective depth. Science fails to stabilize the mystery. That matters. The ego believes understanding means controlling reality conceptually. But Solaris reveals dimensions of mind beyond rational management. ACIM similarly points beyond intellectual mastery towards surrender of false certainty. Then there is guilt. Deep, unresolved guilt permeates the film. Chris's relationship with Hari is haunted by regret and emotional avoidance. Her reappearance forces confrontation with what was never truly processed. ACIM says guilt is the hidden engine beneath much of perception, not ordinary healthy remorse. Existential self-condemnation tied to the belief in separation. The ego says, you destroyed love, you failed, you are irredeemable. And so the mind creates defenses, distance, analysis, control, detachment, projection. But Solaris bypasses defense. The inner becomes visible. That is terrifying for the ego. And Hari herself is deeply interesting spiritually. She is simultaneously real and unreal. That paradox is very ACIM-like. The Course often challenges binary thinking, illusion versus truth, form versus essence, projection versus love. Hari begins as projection, yet genuine relational tenderness emerges through the interaction. That is important. Even within distorted perception, love can still become a bridge toward healing. ACIM calls this the holy relationship transformation. Relationships initially rooted in projection can become classrooms for awakening when used differently. Another major overlap is the instability of identity. The recreated beings in Solaris struggle with selfhood. Who am I? Am I memory? Am I real? Am I merely someone else's thought? ACIM pushes similar questions toward the ego self itself. The personality identity feels solid, but upon examination, it is built from memory, conditioning, attachment, interpretation, narrative continuity. The Course asks, what remains prior to the self-concept? And Solaris never gives fully comforting answers. That matters too. Real spiritual inquiry often dismantles certainty before peace emerges. The ego wants immediate metaphysical clarity. The deeper journey passes through ambiguity, disorientation, humility, and surrender. Visually, the ocean of Solaris itself resembles a vast living mind, fluid, formless, creative, reflective, almost like the unconscious made planetary. ACM might reinterpret this symbolically. The separated mind projects worlds from hidden content continuously, not just internally imagined worlds, experienced worlds. And the ending is profoundly ACM adjacent. Chris appears to return home, but subtle clues suggest he may still exist within a generated reality. Why leave this unresolved? Because the deeper question is not, which layer is objectively real? The deeper question is, what is awareness identified with? ACM ultimately points beyond the obsession with dream mechanics. The ego becomes fascinated with which reality is true, which layer is illusion, how many dimensions exist. Spirit asks instead, is perception rooted in fear or love? That shift changes everything. Perhaps the deepest ACM resonance in Solaris is this: what we refuse to heal does not disappear, it returns, not as punishment, but as invitation. The mind keeps recreating unresolved separation until another choice becomes possible. And beneath all the mystery, grief, projection, and dreamlike instability, Solaris quietly asks the same question ACIM asks constantly: can love remain when certainty collapses?